So did you find help or experience with, and this is just me being inquisitive, with the older community, with elders, with, any, people that had maybe been married for 50, 60 years, who could have sat you down and said, hey, this is what we've seen going down that road. Was that in the recipe, or were you not able to find that as much?
Well, the reason why I decided to stay on marriage, because I wanted to leave the marriage, was because someone did reach out to me who was married, and been married for a while.
Mm-hmm.
His name is Marvin Jinks. I wrote him. He's in my book, and I think he takes pride in that too, because he loves to help. He's not necessarily focused on just marriages, but he does feel, he's a pastor. He does feel called to actually, be there for people who are in need and everything. And so, yes, he was the one to help, but honestly, nobody else was.
No.
Nobody. Parents were too emotionally involved.
Right.
It's like, what do you say, when you have someone like myself who is being a little bit irrational, but that is your son. I had an issue, there was some relationship issues with me and my, mom at that point, because she felt for Tia, because, my biological father, left and wasn't the best husband as well. So she really felt like she related. So, but it was too close to the situation with that.
Right.
And
even then too, like other couples that we reached out to, like maybe friends or just asking, maybe just as a general question, a lot of people will they'll give you the meat without the potatoes.
Mm.
They'll say, oh, it takes communication, it takes patience, it takes prayer. Okay, but what exactly does that look like? So
Right.
what we did is we took their foundations, communication, prayer, meditation, whatever the things that you felt like helped you along the way. And we actually took that into a platform to show people what that looks like, because the elders didn't tell us what it looks like.
So, Donna, you brought up something that rings in my mind, the generational curse, right? Where a generation back or two, they may have had experiences where they weren't successful, and that ends up passing on forward to the other generations. And, do you feel as though people, especially in today's time, bring the wounds of their parents into their marriage? Does that
uh,
make sense?
it makes complete sense. Yeah. I think all those issues, when you call it generational curse, I believe those situations creates a life of its own. And they did come up in our marriage multiple times. She realized she had to deal with some issues that she grew up around. I had to deal with the issue of not having my biological father around, and what does it look like to be a man. And because I didn't really have the relationship with my stepfather, where we can go out and do men things and have deep conversations about sex and all that stuff. So a lot of the stuff I had to learn on my own. But one of the biggest things that helped me progress in that,
You got a couple of kids, so you figured it out.
I mean, you had to, right? But one of the things that the steps that I took in order for me to do that was actually not only getting out of my mindset, saying that I am not hindered by that generational curse, but also
Right.
I always would say, like, well, I didn't have my father, and I had to learn this. Like, there's no point in saying that, because a lot of people who are successful don't necessarily keep reminding themselves about what held them down. So it's getting that out of your mind by not speaking that, into existence, and being able to take responsibility and say, look, I may not know this, so let me just learn, instead of making an excuse saying, well,
Right.
my father.
And I'm a big believer in that philosophy.
Right.
I like that. I'm a big, just because you didn't have or because you went without is not an excuse for not getting.
Right.
And so I just want to say, so one of the things that I did do in absence of my biological father not being there for me is I would take it. I followed people who were close to their father, like a colleague of ours. And, I had a friend that mentored me. I learned from him about, what it looks like to be a man, how to dress, how to, I didn't know how to, well, I still don't know how to tie, but
I got an episode on that coming up soon.
Okay.
Just so you know. Okay.
That's okay. That's probably why we haven't done yet. But no, I learned a lot of other stuff on my own by, other men and certain teachers and all that kind of stuff. And even from you, we've had conversations, I take that mentorship and I take the wisdom and I try to embed that into my DNA. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and a lot of what y'all are talking about is what alpha really is about. It's a lot of people, you know, who didn't have that opportunity, right, to spend certain times with their biological father, or there may have been issues between parents, or whatever the circumstances situation is. You know, even myself, my parents were married 20, 21 years. They divorced. There were issues in the home, and you know, a lot of times as men, there is that adage to buck up and to deal with it, and to some degree there's reality in that, right? I mean, because you know, there's no crying in the suffering, but on the other end of it though, there's a reality of also having to learn to be able to, you know, say, hey, I didn't get certain things, how do I go pursue them, how do I find them, so I'm not incomplete. And I think sometimes people misconstrue that, right? They misconstrue where you're seeking help and they see that as weakness, or insecurity, when what you're trying to do really is complete those parts that you weren't able to get when you were younger. And you know, so they're like, oh, if you're taking this or course, or if you're pursuing that, does that mean that, you know, you're not, you know, no, it means that you're out here trying to, you know, fulfill those things that you possibly didn't get in your younger years. So I applaud both of you for that.
Right.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
to basically learn that, you know, our path or our past was not our home. You know, we didn't have to stay there, you know, and a lot of people, like you said, use it as a hindrance to move forward. Well, I didn't have this or I didn't have that. So we made the conscious decision together to say, okay, you know what? Our situation from where we came from is not ideal. Let's just speak it for what it is. It was not ideal, but the perfect part in that is that our past is not our home. We don't have to live there. You know,
Right.
our future is our home. You know, we take time every day to keep building toward that future instead of worrying about what I didn't have before, but what can I have now?
Right. Excellent. Nice. So in terms of you know what, we'll talk about the program a little more. Let me get into a little more spicier stuff. So you know, as we were getting ready to start the show, I was telling you guys about this thing that went on where, you know, and I'm going to actually look it up, and that way I'll have some point of reference, because I definitely want to get you guys' perspective on this. And what this really revolves around is, once again, so, you know, I think you guys are young in the sense of, you know, you're still in your 20s, you're still, you know, in a young marriage, and you know, but you're working at it, you're building up, and it seems like a lot of people today actually wait a little longer to get married. You know, some people are waiting until their 30s and things of that nature. And I myself actually think that's not probably the smartest idea in the world, but it seems to be the pervasive idea. And so what this comment is about, and I can't find this segment, is about, you know, people, or in this, more specifically, this woman waiting to, you know, until she's built her career up and she's successful, and now she wants to get married, and this relationship coach is telling her that she's overreaching, you know, based on how old she is and where she's at. Found it. I'm going to put this link into the chat box, and I want you guys to check this out. And it's about 7 minutes long. You can skip through it or whatever the case may be. And then I want to get some commentary on that. But I didn't want to play the clip on the show because I don't want to someone say that I'm infringing on their right, or you know, their video. But that's gotten multi-million hits. It's streaming across social media all over the place. So I want to unpackage it from a certain level of one, are people waiting too late to get married, and especially women. You know, I don't want to seem like I'm being controversial or whatever the case may be, but there's a lot I don't agree with for what he said, but there's a lot I think is reality. And I think part of the reality is that, you know, it's not about equal, meaning that women tend to be more in a position when they're younger, between the ages of 19 to 30, let's say, of being able to be a little more choosier on who they may want to select as a mate, where men kind of hit their plateau anywhere between 35 and 45, where they're a little more established, they've calmed down, they're not in the streets, they've got a good job. And once again, I'm not saying that this is, you know, the gospel, but I'm saying is that that's reality, right? I mean, a man at 35 to 45 is maybe in a better position in terms of if he's looking to get married to a woman who's in her late 20s or early 30s, you know, versus the opposite. So that's one part. The other part is you know, are we being too fanciful? Is it too many fantasies in general on the male side and the female side? I want this woman who looks like an Instagram model. I want this guy who looks like he's on some reality TV show or rap video, in that regard. And then, you know, and also just whatever you guys felt like from a marriage and relationship standpoint that came out of that video. And like I said, there's a lot on there I felt that he could have been a much more of a gentleman and a much more professional about. He didn't have to be that coarse. But at the same time, you know, some people have said, well, he's trying to use shock therapy. And I don't know if I agree with that. But again, I think that there's a lot to unpack in that conversation. So I'll hand it off to you.
You can, yeah, you can analyze the situation.
So first off, that video was very interesting. Very interesting. I will agree with you. I think he could have been a little bit more tactful, you know, in things he was saying, because he was a little bit rude, especially towards the end. I feel like if someone's lost, it's your choice to be able to lead them. And I feel like he took that opportunity to be able to lead this woman to victory for granted. But I do kind of understand what he's saying. If you peel back the onion and really dig from a you know, a healthy standpoint and thinking about healthy relationships, I see what he's saying in terms of, you know, the fanciful idea of marriage. So the way I like to explain to a lot of women, because recently I've been on Clubhouse. I don't know if you're on that app, but it's basically—
No, I'm not familiar with it, but you know, educate me.
So Clubhouse is a social app. It's all audio, so you can't really see anything but the picture, but they create a lot of different rooms on different topics. So last night they had a room on sci-fi, they had a room on relationships, and people kind of like to tag myself and my husband in to give our advice on relationships. So last night, a woman was asking me pretty much the same question, you know, should she lower her standards to kind of be more suitable to find a partner? But she says she hasn't really dated anybody in the last 5 years. And so I told her, I said, you know, she said that her guy has to be at least 6'2", because she's 5'8". She's a lot taller.
Okay.
And that was one of her requirements. And I said, you know, you have to understand that when you're looking at relationships, you have requirements and you have negotiables. But everybody's negotiables are requirements now, so it makes it hard for them to find suitable.
I love that. You have requirements and negotiables. I'm going to steal that.
And I told her, I said, your negotiables are requirements, and your requirements are not even considered to be flexible at all. So if you say it's a requirement for somebody to make 6 figures, now you've automatically canceled out 90% of all men in America. So now you're competing in a bubble for the 10% of all men in America, because most men do not make over 6 figures.
And I like how you said that 90% of all men, which is very accurate. Right.
And so I was letting her know, like, hey, get you a list, you know, write down things that are requirements, such as chivalry, respect, you know, love, loyalty. Write down your requirements, and then you can look at your negotiables. And of course, it's obviously more suitable if the person has more of your negotiables. Like for me, my negotiable was for my husband to do romantic things for me. You know, I love that. You know, he surprises me all the time with different things. Like one thing I have a weird obsession with is llamas. And he always caters to that. Like, I just think they're beautiful creatures.
I was going to say, did I hear that right? Llamas?
Llamas. They're just beautiful creatures to me.
Okay.
And somebody would make that a requirement for somebody to cater to that fancy. but it's a
I
negotiable.
ain't gonna see a llama come through the back. We're like from
Well,
room to room.
You say that, but once we get the money, she does want to buy a llama.
Yeah,
Okay, you know what I mean? And a llama throwing up deuces on me like, yo, what's up, dog? You know, don't mind me. Strolling.
but some people would make that
Uh-huh.
negotiable a requirement to now, if that person isn't meeting their needs, that they feel like that's not a suitable partner because they're not acting in their negotiables.
And if anyone has a hard time understanding the difference between the requirements versus negotiables, is the difference between what is completing you and what is building you up. You know, having a tall person, you not being okay with that, that's more of you dealing with insecurity. But somebody that knows how to, you know, open the door for you, that's a respectful thing. That's building you up as a woman, as a queen, you
Right.
know, like you are. So, you know, that's how you know, is like, is this that I want? Is this really going to make me a better person, or just is it going to make me think that I feel better,
Right,
you know,
yeah.
because I have self-esteem issues within myself. You know, it seemed like she was dealing with some self-esteem issues,
Mhm.
you know, because, you know, the thing about being married is you can create your own rules for the most part. And if you want to share finance, if you want to be the one to make more, whatever, and that's something that you guys agree on, that's great. Because at the end of the day, you know, you both are both and pulling in income and everything. And you know, I definitely think that, you know, I do think that men should definitely be the providers. But you know, if you're in a situation where your mindset's already just like, I have to have this, you know, then you just limit yourself to finding someone, and you're just gonna end up getting a lot older before you, because it's rare. Like, you may find someone who makes that money, but to find a good man, or, you know, good women in general, like it's tough, especially
Right.
nowadays. Like our generation, the ones that our kids are growing up with, like I told someone the other day, like they're gonna have a hard time what did I say, being able to communicate, because they're using social platforms to create this facade, and then when they're reality, they're gonna feel forced to actually keep that up, or they won't be able to keep it up, and the true colors will show. So this generation is really does have a challenge coming ahead of them, just because of all the supposed to be tools, is actually, you know, they are utilizing it like in everything they do, you know, meeting people. I mean, it doesn't matter. Like, so yeah, that's just my thoughts when it comes to her, is she's gonna, yeah, anybody is gonna have to really figure out negotiables versus you know, with requirements and stuff. So
Right.
So, you know, and I wanted you guys to watch that clip because, you know, he calls himself a relationship coach, if you will, you know, and you're in that same sort of business, albeit more on the marriage side, but before the marriage comes relationships, right? And, you know, even myself, you know, I got a lot of homies that'll be like, hey, man, you know, so you're single and you can do what you want to do and this and that. And I mean, well, obviously, COVID-19, that ain't going down regardless. But I mean, you know, even outside of that, there's a lot of what you're saying is there's a lot of quantity in Atlanta, but there's very little quality, you know. And I find that the quality element is diminished a lot. And, you know, some people will say, well, what about the men? I don't know. I don't date dudes. So I couldn't tell you about that. You know what I mean? I can only tell you from the perspective of a guy, you know what I mean? That you go out and you meet, you know, women, and you find a lot of them are more focused on what I would consider to be more propaganda, a more propaganda mindset. And that propaganda mindset is that, you know, you need to be this, that, and the third, opposed to looking at, like you said, maybe the necessities.